Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax guys.
guys.
Oh, you got your scrolling banner
Complete
this week.
Banner, right back. It's been starched. It's right back from the dry cleaners. It's all ready. Yeah.
Oh, well, I've got one here too, but if I hold it up, it'll disappear against this virtual background. So we still have to figure out a way around that.
The technology is incredible.
Technology is cool, but it does have its limitations sometimes. But I understand you've been out at the fair there in Winston-Salem all week, huh?
Yes. Last year, no fair. This year, fair. And the Winston-Salem Fairgrounds are jam-packed. The James E. Strait shows. This is one of the last places on the Eastern Seaboard that the fair midway is delivered by train.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like fun.
And so everybody gets, it's a big deal because about a week before the fair actually opens, the James E. Strait's fair train pulls in up to Winston-Salem. They come from Florida, and they have a couple of stops, and Winston-Salem is one of them. So it's been exciting here this week because the rides are open, the figure eight racing that takes place on the grandstand, the music, the jugglers, all kinds of fun stuff for kids. And, everybody's a kid at heart when they get to go to the fair.
Yeah, and the candy apples and all of the fried food and all that. I do remember that.
Turkey legs are about, you have to take, it's like 2 or 3 days to eat one turkey leg. I don't see how they make turkey. I'd hate to see a turkey from the turkey legs.
Oh, mercy. I tell you,
so big that you just really. So anyway, yeah. So it has everything to do with the fair tax, because consider how much extra money you'd have for all the fun stuff at the fair if we had the fair tax. And it's not the fair tax, it's the fair tax.
Yes, I got you. I'll tell you what, instead of coming up in July next year, I may need to come up and do our live show from up there in October, and we can go to the fair, but who knows?
Absolutely.
Anyway, we got to get going. This is a special edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. As we have mentioned earlier, Alan Waters, who is running for Congress in the state of Rhode Island, has been the seventh candidate for the 2022 election cycle to sign the FAIRtax Candidate Pledge. You did an interview with him a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to roll that here in just a second. But Alan is a neat guy. I'll tell you what, you'll like him.
I've been excited to meet all these folks that are out there. And as we've said in the last few programs, one person at a time. You talk to one person, listeners talk to one person, viewers talk to one person at a time, get the next guy excited, and the next guy, always be ready. And I think that was one of the things that I liked about Ron and Elaine too, the Maleros. They were always ready to have a conversation with somebody, a real quick 30-second conversation with somebody, and you pique their interest and they'll really dig in. If they really take the time, they'll figure out, hey, the fair tax is something that we need to take. We need to take all the way to Washington and make it happen.
All righty. Well, let's take a second here and recognize all of the FAIRtax Candidate Pledge signers so far. Marissa Selvig in Wyoming was the first one. We got 4 of them at the Candidate Forum in Las Vegas: Alex Stovall, Willie Montague, Jared Sessler, and Reuben Young. Dan McCon from Texas signed on not long ago, and now Alan Waters is number 7. So let's just go ahead and roll this interview with Alan right now. And FAIRtax Power Radio is glad to be talking to an old friend today, and I mean an old friend of the program and a longtime supporter of FAIRtax. Hello, Alan Waters.
Hello. How are you doing today?
Oh, good to see you again. I'm doing fine. How about you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I'm so glad that you invited me on.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've got to note that you are candidate number 7 nationwide to sign the FAIRtax Candidate Pledge for the 2022 election cycle, and that is noted, and we appreciate it a great deal, sir.
Well, it's not my first rodeo with the FAIRtax. I've done it at least 2 times before, and I never give up on the FAIRtax. I believe in it. I love it. And I love it because I love the American people. I love my country. And you know what? One way to I like to think of is bringing America back, is taking America back, is simplifying our tax code and having less manipulation and corruption built in it, around it, and how it's used.
Okay, I want to get into your history with the FAIRtax here in just a second, but I need to get a little plug in here real quick, because the last time we met, we were actually face-to-face at CPAC. Remember that? I remember walking through the vendor area and we hear this, "Hey, FAIRtax guys," call behind us.
I don't know what it is. Every time the FAIRtax guys, they just bring us this excitement.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. It was at CPAC in Florida. Yes, it was.
Yeah, you saw our FAIRtax Power Radio shirts and just had to flag us down. But you may or may not know, I am on a personal quest here to organize what I'm calling the FAIRtax 500. Imagine, if you will, 500 FAIRtax supporters decked out in their hats and shirts and all their FAIRtax gear, walking around at the next CPAC in front of all the political types and especially all the media types that are down there at CPAC. So if you're coming to the next one, and we still don't know if it's going to be back in Florida again or if they're going to return it to the DC area, but if we see it CPAC again, excuse me, I want you to have a bunch of your FAIRtax friends with you. Deal?
Yeah, deal.
All right. Now, you mentioned a minute ago, you've been a FAIRtax supporter for a long time. Go back and detail your history with the FAIRtax. When you first heard about it and how long you've been supporting it.
Oh, gee. I'm going back until 2017, maybe 2016, something like that. Definitely, I was running a political race in Massachusetts, a big statewide race, and it was something that I was running with because once I heard about it, I knew it was everything that I believed in, you know?
Okay. Now, I know this always sounds like a rather mundane question when I ask people this, but I haven't figured out another way to ask it yet. But with so many good things about the FAIRtax, what specifically about the FAIRtax attracted you to it? What caught your eye and your ear to start with? And out on the campaign trail, what do you think is the most important thing about the FAIRtax that you want to get across to the people you're talking to?
Well, one of the things is that the federal income tax itself, it's in many ways it's being misused, it's abusing the people, but without it, as you may know, as you would know, the federal income tax was enacted in 1913. It was probably a promise back then that they would do away with it, but they probably need to raise more revenue during World War I believe. But let's fast forward to 2021 right now, and the answer is it's antiquated. It's something that's being used as a tool to. It's complicated. It's expensive, but without it, the trillions. We must spend in time and money every year at least $1 trillion of just to comply with the federal government. But what really turns me on is it would be rocket fuel for the economy. That the economy is what's important. We need to have more jobs, better jobs, and that would be a key to reduce poverty. Money would come in from all over the world, and America, as we still are number one, we would be a lot higher number one in the world if we eliminated the income tax and went to a national retail sales tax. And all the people that that 40% of the American people don't even pay income tax. And then we have such a broad black market of legal and illegal businesses. Everybody has to go to the store. It's just so simple. So, people love it. Politicians hate it.
Yeah. Do you find that people have a hard time thinking outside the income tax box? I mean, nobody working today ever's known any other system. And you hear some people talk about, the FAIRtax is going to make your life so much more expensive because they're kind of envisioning it as a tax on top of what we're already paying rather than as a replacement for what people are already doing with the income tax.
Well, I think that when we keep it simple in terms of explaining it to people, and when they really start to understand that there's not going to be any more tax withholdings on the federal side, and that the national sales tax would cover our Social Security obligations and on, the light starts to go off. What it is that we just federal income tax is a bad habit, and we need to break that bad habit and go into something that would say, imagine just, you're going through your life, at least on the federal tax side, and the government needs money to run on, but if we are paying for it as we spend our money for goods and services on the retail side, and only new goods and services, that's important. People would think, well, that tax is going to be on everything. No, just new goods and services, and it would make the country run. A lot of people would. The more we tell them and get the word out, the more that the people would, regular folks would really appreciate what the fair tax is all about.
Sounds like once you understand it, you'll demand it.
Absolutely. Once we understand it, we demand it.
Where have we heard that before? Let me talk a little bit. Go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, let me talk a little bit about your specific race coming up. I did a little bit of research. You're running in Rhode Island District 1. The incumbent is a gentleman named David Cicilline. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, we say it's Cicilline up here, but
U.S.
Representative David Cicilline.
Okay.
And I don't think he would be a fan of the fair tax. I think he might be more about raising income taxes, where I would like to keep them the way they are, or at least eliminate federal income tax altogether.
He's been around for a while. He first took office in 2011, won handily last time around with over 70% of the vote. And again, I'm not trying to sound too partisan here, but just kind of, comment on the lay of the land. Several prominent Democrats, have had their trouble over their COVID handling. Gavin Newsom got recalled, and of course, all the current controversy around Governor Cuomo. And there's some pretty loud voices now saying that Joe Biden and the squad are damaging the Democrat brand with the electorate. So I know it's really early, but could you give us kind of the lay of the land in your race right now? Do you think Cicilline might be vulnerable, or more so than usual?
I think that David Cicilline would be much more vulnerable, because as Republicans, certainly for better or for worse, had to live with President Trump. I voted for President Trump twice, and what I know now, I vote for him again. But what I see is that the leader of the party, the president, is making a lot of bad decisions and bad policies. And that continues to tarnish what I thought of as a good Democrat brand, such as when President John F. Kennedy was president. Now, that's a Democrat that believed in fiscal responsibility and believed in the Second Amendment, and believed in a strong national defense. And that's not what the party represents anymore, at least by the elites, and the leaders. So, yeah, absolutely. I see David Cicilline as being the most vulnerable right now, because he's not really bringing home the bacon for the state of Rhode Island, but he's voting for all of those things that might be against what a lot of the American people are looking for.
Okay, again, just looking historically and traditionally, New England up there, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, all up here together, traditionally have been a pretty deep blue area. And it's just a fact that the deep blue areas have suffered, more draconian lockdowns and COVID restrictions and this, that. Is it accurate to say in your district that there are a lot of people up there who have lost their jobs and have had their businesses shut down?
Absolutely. Right now, we are in an interim governor, but the Governor Gina Raimondo, who's went on to be the head of commerce, when she started locking down the state, a lot of small businesses have been decimated, especially those that were in, Rhode Island is known for its food, its hospitality, and a lot of those industries were really brought to its knees. And so, sadly, a lockdown can be very discriminatory, whereas the large companies, such as some of the big box retail stores, they stayed open, but the smaller businesses had to close. So there's a lot of pain here, and there's still a lot of pain going on, because sadly, in a lot of the more Democrat states, they don't want to give up that power of emergency. That emergency power they have in the pandemic. So the pain goes on.
Okay, just on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the pain index where 1 is fine and 10 is just about unbearable?
Oh, I would say right now, because so business is coming back a little bit. That's probably around 7 or 8. But that's business by business. Some businesses thrive. People, some maybe more money. If you were selling masks or something like that. But here, Rhode Island, sadly, is number 50th often in the business. We call it the business friendliness. And we have a very high budget for a small state. So there's a lot of high regulation. So all of these things are taking away from a more vibrant economy, an economy where more people broadly participate in it. So, and David Cicilline is very quiet. He's very quiet about all of the things that are going on that are hurting our economy. So that's why in Rhode Island, we need, we need some new ideas, some fresh ideas. We need real change. And so, yes, it's difficult in a blue state that might not believe in things such as a fair tax and whatever. But I think the people right now they're ready.
Okay, well, where I'm going with this, I'm really not trying to be overly partisan because the fair tax is good for everybody. But we know that for whatever reason, the leadership of the Democrat Party has been pretty hostile to the fair tax. But if you've got a lot of constituents who are struggling financially, and it sounds like you do, it seems to me that, partisan rhetoric notwithstanding, those people would be especially receptive to the message of the fair tax. You can bring home your whole paycheck. You get a tax refund every month, all of the things like that. There's no withholding, no federal payroll taxes. People that are hurting financially, I would think, would be especially receptive to that message. Are you finding that to be the case?
Absolutely. Once again, people understand not only how it works, but the benefits. And you said that so finally, how can they not like it? And most people, once it comes income tax time again, the expense of getting their taxes prepared, knowing that most people aren't sure whether they're going to owe taxes or get money back. It's almost in many cases, it's a negative emotional experience. So once they learn that no more filing, no more taxes withheld, the simplicity of it all, the fair tax, people say, well, I like that. I like that. I hear that.
I'm just curious here. When you tell people I support a tax system that lets you bring home your entire paycheck, do they look at you like you got 3 heads? Are people just so locked into that income tax box that they think you're talking pie in the sky instead of a real tax proposal?
Well, what I just find is once you talk about it, something that's been around now, the movement, at least 20 years, I find that a lot of people will, there's a slight disbelief just because we're just so tied to the system that rules us. But the fair tax movement, I feel part of freedom fighters in terms of, we want more freedom, less government coercion, less government interaction in our life. And the fair tax just makes a lot of bad things go away.
Okay, I keep telling myself you're going to get in trouble asking this question one of these days, but I'm going to do it anyway. Are you meeting any resistance? Have you met anybody out on the campaign trail that looked at you and said, that stinks, I'd rather have the income tax?
No one has ever said that. Most of the time, it's just people not believing that it will be very difficult to pass in Congress. And well, that is the fact, because imagine as the next congressman in District 1 for the state of Rhode Island, I want to free my fellow Rhode Islanders and my fellow countrymen from this aggravation, this yoke that we have over our back called the federal income tax. And then, well, one thing we can bring a slight cheer, that little sparkle in the eye. I always say that you haven't lived life yet, till you've heard from the IRS. And to think that the Internal Revenue Service would be gone, replaced by something much more simpler and less, no more bullying and not a problematic part of the government for the people. That sometimes brings a little smirk, if not a smile.
All right. Okay, I get it. One more time. I'm just trying to kind of get a lay of what your race is going to look like. I've talked to a couple of FAIRtax candidates who are primarily focusing their campaigns on the inner city, where they say it's not surprising that practically nobody there has ever heard of the FAIRtax. A couple of weeks ago, we talked to one of the guys that's trying to replace Kevin Brady, who was a former FAIRtax co-sponsor out there in Texas. So the folks in that district are a little more well-versed with the FAIRtax. What's it like in your district? Just kind of what percentage would you say off the top of your head of the people you talk to have at least heard of the FAIRtax?
Oh, I would say still a small percentage.
So we've still got our work cut out for us.
We have a lot of work cut out for us, but it's times like these where there's so much change. And with one political movement wanting to add, $3.5 trillion more to the budget and raise taxes to pay for it, what a nice way to counter that was saying, well, we can, I believe in eliminating the federal income tax. Certainly, the government has to learn to live within its means, but most importantly is that imagine not having anyone tell us that, you know what, we're getting to raise our income tax one more time. And no more promises to say, well, we're going to tax the rich, but then the middle class often take a great burden themselves. So,
I
think. Go ahead.
I was saying, if we get enough people like you that are going out on the campaign trail and telling people you can bring home your whole paycheck, honest, you really can, that will have to start making inroads.
That will. And when you say it that way, and then you explain why, and then I think it starts to sink in with most people that are actually working and paying taxes, which is a lot of people, from the working class to the more wealthier folks. The answer is everybody has to put their report card every April 15th. And wouldn't it be nice to not have to report that anymore?
Absolutely. With the FAIRtaxes, it's no longer the government's business. Anything about your personal finances is just none of their business. You don't have to tell them anything. And that's really cool. Listen, before I forget here, I'm sure you're familiar with the FAIRtax palm cards. I don't know how well this shows up against my virtual background, but you've seen these, the prebate schedule on one side and the other thing. If hang on with me after we're on the air, I'll get a mailing address from you and I'll send you a supply of these.
Oh, I'd love those. Are those the regular palm card size ones?
Yeah, those are the regular palm card size. They're a little bigger than the 3x5. I haven't measured them precisely, but I say as soon as we get off the air here, I'll get a mailing address and I'll send some out to you.
I'm looking forward to them. I'm still sending the ones from 2020, and I'd love a refresher.
All righty. Well, appreciate it. Alan Waters, Rhode Island, District 1. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today. And hopefully we'll be seeing you and a bunch of your FAIRtax friends at the next CPAC.
Yep. Alan Waters for Congress. Alan, ALLEN, rwaters.com. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Thanks. We'll talk to you later. All right. Told you he was an interesting guy.
He's vivacious. He's well-spoken, super positive. And those are the types of folks all across the country that we need to find one person at a time. Find your candidate, find that person, encourage them to run. It may be somebody that you weren't even thinking would be a candidate, and they may not have even thought that they could do it. But it has to start one by one, local level, get that person involved and move them forward. And it may be, it may be somebody that that you haven't even really thought about. So, I'm inviting everybody who's on the program today to think about that. Write down the names of folks that you might consider as being someone who would be able to go and offer their name for the ballot.
Yeah, so you may have caught it in the interview. He was the one that so far the only candidate that has seen us walking by at CPAC and hollered out to us, "Hey, FAIRtax guys, come over." So we had a nice interview with him last year at CPAC.
That's right.
So hopefully he can come, like he said he would, and bring some of his FAIRtax friends with. Again, we're working on the FAIRtax 500. 500 FAIRtax volunteers at the next CPAC. Now, we still don't know if it's going to be in Florida or the DC area, but can you just imagine the impact that 500 people walking around in FAIRtax gear would have on both the politicians and the media?
Absolutely. And folks, that's an invitation for you right now to make plans to consider the CPAC meeting next year, wherever it might be, to join us for a week at the venue and talk about the FAIRtax. And I think that impact there, even if even if people aren't receptive 100%, there's no way that they can deny that there is a presence for the FAIRtax movement.
Yeah, I understand one thing we kind of got to be careful with, that the FAIRtax is perceived by some as being a right-wing Republican idea. And the fact that we want to go to CPAC, I'm afraid, might kind of underscore that. But even the fact remains, though, that the FAIRtax is good for everybody. In fact, the chairman's report that just came out last Friday was actually directed at Bernie Sanders and explained how the FAIRtax could help the progressive movement fund some of the spending programs that they're proposing.
Well, I've always thought that if there was a way to, because the knee-jerk reaction, you say FAIRtax, oh, it's Republican, oh, it's conservative, oh, it's, and it's not. It is a method of collecting revenue. It has nothing to do with politics.
Yeah, maybe we need to address this next week on FAIRtax Power Radio. We'll see if we can come up with something.
Great idea. Great.
I'll put you on the spot there. You got a little while to figure that out, but we'll make that work. And we got, again, about a minute and a half left in the show. Of course, we do want to continue to mention the FAIRtax Marketplace, FAIRtaxmarketplace.com. It's, again, there's still not a whole lot out there, but if you're a vendor that would like to market your product to over 400,000 people in the FAIRtax database nationwide, you can sign up for that. If you would like to see a particular product on the marketplace, you can go in and make your suggestions and make that work. But again, FAIRtaxmarketplace.com. And if you want to talk to us, the FAIRtaxguys@gmail.com.
That's right. We'll take a question. You might have a suggestion for a show topic or an interview. Heck, you may even want to say, hey, I'm throwing my hat in the ring and I'm going to be the representative from my community. And hey, we'll probably find a time to interview you and put you on the program with us, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to put you to work doing some of the interviews. As you mentioned before, Ron was not particularly comfortable doing interviews, but I know that you can do that. But again, we do want to thank Alan Waters for talking with us. I mean, what an enthusiastic FAIRtax supporter, exactly the kind of guy that I could just talk to all day. You know what that's like. But I'm afraid we ain't going to get to talk too much more at all, because this is the end of this edition. We are flat out of time. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
We're the FAIRtax guys. Reminding you again, the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
The FAIRtax is a tax replacement plan where we take all the federal income taxes, including corporate, personal, gift, and estate taxes, and replace them with one national consumption tax on new purchases above the poverty level only. This form of consumption tax comes with no exceptions and is progressive, not regressive. The poor are not paying more, and the rich are not paying less. What makes it progressive is that all Americans are untaxed up to the poverty level via the prebate, much like your standard tax deduction. The taxes are collected by retail businesses at state level, so the system is more accountable. The IRS is done away with, and you have control over your money and what the overall tax rate your household pays. The FAIRtax is revenue neutral, so the government receives the same amount of money as they do now, and it's fair because you decide what's fair, not them. To learn more, visit FAIRtax.org and be sure to like us on social media to help educate your friends and spread the word.